The rain hammered against the glass windows of Patterson and Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in Manhattan. Inside the towering 52nd floor office, 17 of the country's most expensive lawyers sat around an enormous mahogany conference table, their faces etched with frustration and exhaustion. They had been working for 3 months straight, billing over $2 million in legal fees, and they still had nothing to show for it. At the head of the table sat Marcus Chen, the chief executive officer of Chen Technologies, a billion-dollar software company that was on the brink of collapse. His company was being sued for breach of contract by Titan Industries, and if they lost this case, Chen Technologies would be forced to pay $800 million in damages, effectively bankrupting the company and putting 15,000 employees out of work. The contract in question was 300 pages long, dense with legal terminology and technical specifications. Somewhere in those pages, Marcus was certain there had to be a loophole, an escape clause, something that could save his company. But after 3 months of analysis, the 17 lawyers had found nothing. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the lead attorney, Jonathan Pierce, a man who charged $1,500 per hour and had a reputation for winning impossible cases. Jonathan had graduated from Yale Law School, clerked for a Supreme Court justice, and had never lost a major corporate case in his 20-year career. But even he seemed defeated now. "Jonathan, we are running out of time. The trial starts in 2 weeks. Are you telling me that with all your expertise, with all the resources at your disposal, you cannot find a single way out of this contract?" Jonathan shifted uncomfortably in his expensive Italian suit. "Mr. Chen, I understand your frustration. My team and I have analyzed every clause, every subsection, every footnote in this document. We have consulted with 3 additional contract specialists from other firms. We have run computer analysis looking for contradictions and ambiguities. The contract appears to be ironclad. Titan Industries had very competent lawyers when they drafted this agreement. I am sorry, but I do not see a path forward that does not involve settlement." "Settlement?" Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making several lawyers jump. "They are demanding $700 million in settlement."
That is still enough to destroy us. My grandfather started this company in his garage 40 years ago. My father built it into what it is today before he passed. And now I am supposed to be the one who loses it all? There has to be another way. The other lawyers exchanged glances but said nothing. They had all reached the same conclusion. The contract was unbreakable. Some of them felt genuinely sorry for Marcus, but they had done everything possible. Sometimes cases were simply unwinnable. Outside the conference room, in a small cubicle near the copy machines, sat Sarah Mitchell. She was 28 years old, a secretary who had been working at Patterson and Associates for 3 years. She made $35,000 a year, barely enough to cover her rent in a tiny studio apartment in Queens and send a little money back home to help her mother with medical bills. Sarah had not gone to law school. She had not even finished college. After her father died when she was 19, killed in a construction accident that left the family with no savings and mountains of debt, she had to drop out of community college to work full-time and support her younger brother and sister. She had dreams once, dreams of becoming a lawyer herself, of arguing cases in courtrooms, of making a difference in people's lives. But life had other plans. Her brother, Tommy, was now 16 and needed to stay in school. Her sister, Maria, was 14 and wanted to go to college someday. Their mother, Elena, worked as a nurse, but her arthritis was getting worse, making it harder for her to work long shifts. Sarah sent home $400 every month, money she could barely afford, but her family needed it.
Still, Sarah loved her job, even though most of the lawyers barely noticed she existed. She loved being surrounded by law books and legal documents. She loved learning about cases and contracts. Whenever she had spare time, which was not often, she would read the legal texts that the lawyers left lying around, teaching herself about contract law, tort law, corporate law. The other secretaries thought she was crazy, wasting her time reading boring legal documents during lunch breaks. "You know they are never going to make you a lawyer, right?" her colleague Jennifer had said more than once. "You are just a secretary. They do not care how much you know." But Sarah could not help herself. Something about the law fascinated her. The way words could be arranged to create obligations and rights, the way logic and precedent combine to solve disputes, the intellectual challenge of understanding complex legal concepts. It was like solving puzzles, and Sarah had always loved puzzles. That evening, as the lawyers filed out of the conference room looking defeated, Sarah was tasked with making copies of the Titan Industries contract for the trial preparation. As she fed the 300-page document through the copy machine, she could not help but glance at the pages. She had overheard the lawyers talking about the case for months. She knew how important it was, how many jobs depended on finding a solution. She felt terrible for Mr. Chen, who seemed like a decent man who really cared about his employees. Just last week, she had seen him in the break room, making coffee for himself like a regular person, and he had actually smiled at her and said good morning. Most executives never even acknowledged the support staff existed. As page after page came through the copier, Sarah found herself actually reading the contract instead of just mechanically copying it. Most of it was standard legal language, exactly the kind of thing she had been teaching herself about. Purchase agreements, delivery schedules, payment terms, warranty provisions, dispute resolution procedures. She recognized the patterns and structures from the textbooks she had studied. Then, around page 247, something caught her eye. It was a small clause buried in a section about service delivery timelines. The language was convoluted, full of legal jargon, but as Sarah read it more carefully, her heart began to beat faster. She read it again, then a third time. She grabbed a notepad and started writing down notes, cross-referencing it with other sections of the contract. Her hands were shaking slightly. Could this be what everyone had been looking for? Was she really seeing something that 17 brilliant lawyers had missed? Sarah glanced at the clock. It was almost 8 in the evening. Most people had gone home, but she knew Mr. Chen was still in his temporary office down the hall. She had seen him there earlier, sitting alone, looking at financial spreadsheets, probably calculating how to break the news to his employees that the company was finished. She sat there for almost 10 minutes, arguing with herself. Who was she to think she had found something that 17 expert lawyers had missed? She was just a secretary, a college dropout, someone who had learned law from books instead of from professors at fancy universities. She probably misunderstood what she was reading. If she went to Mr. Chen with this and she was wrong, she would look foolish. She might even get fired for wasting his time and overstepping her position. But what if she was right? What if this really was the answer everyone had been searching for? What if she stayed silent and the company went bankrupt and 15,000 people lost their jobs, all because she was too scared to speak up? Sarah thought about her own family, about how they had struggled after her father died. She thought about what it would be like for all those Chen Technologies employees, people with mortgages and kids in college and elderly parents to care for, suddenly finding themselves unemployed. Could she live with herself if she had information that might help and she kept quiet? Sarah took a deep breath, gathered her courage, picked up the contract with her handwritten notes, and walked down the hallway. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. Her palms were sweating. She reached Mr. Chen's office and stood outside the door for a full minute, trying to work up the nerve to knock. Just do it, she told herself. The worst thing that can happen is he tells you you are wrong. That is not the end of the world. She knocked softly on the door. "Come in," his tired voice called from inside. Sarah pushed the door open. Marcus looked up from his laptop, surprised to see anyone still in the office at this hour, especially a secretary he vaguely recognized but had never really spoken to. His eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep, and there were coffee stains on his shirt. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Yes, can I help you?" "Mr. Chen, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I am one of the secretaries here. I am sorry to bother you so late, and I know you must be incredibly busy, but I was making copies of the Titan Industries contract, and I think I might have found something important." Marcus looked at her with a mixture of confusion and barely concealed irritation. "You found something? In the contract? Miss Mitchell, I appreciate your interest, but—" Sarah felt her courage wavering, but pushed forward. "I know this probably sounds crazy, and I am sure I am wrong, but there is this clause on page 247, and when I cross-referenced it with some other sections, I think there might be a defense that no one has considered yet." Miss Mitchell sighed heavily and leaned back in his chair. "Miss Mitchell, I appreciate your enthusiasm. I really do. But I have 17 of the best lawyers in the country working on this case. These are people who went to Harvard and Yale and Stanford. They have spent 3 months analyzing every single page of that contract. They have decades of combined experience. I do not think— Please, Mr. Chen, just give me 5 minutes. If I am wrong, I will apologize for wasting your time and never bother you again. But if there is even a chance I am right, is not it worth 5 minutes to find out?" Something in her voice made Marcus pause. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was the tiniest flicker of hope that had almost died but still refused to be completely extinguished. He looked at this young woman standing in his office, clutching a contract and a notepad, her hands trembling slightly, and he remembered something his father used to say: "Good ideas can come from anywhere. Never be too proud to listen." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. 5 minutes. Sarah sat down and opened the contract to page 247. Her hands were trembling as she pointed to the clause. Okay, here in section 15.3.7, it talks about service delivery timelines. It says that Titan Industries was required to deliver the integrated software modules within 18 months of contract signing. But look at this language here. It says the delivery must be, quote, "complete and operational as specified in Appendix G," unquote. Marcus squinted at the page. Yes, and? We received the software. That is not in dispute. But did you receive it complete and operational as specified in Appendix G? Sarah flipped to the back of the contract, to the appendices. Look at Appendix G. It lists very specific technical requirements. The software had to meet certain performance benchmarks, had to integrate with specific systems, had to include certain features. There are 47 distinct requirements listed here. We know all this, Miss Mitchell. The software they delivered met most of those requirements. We accepted it and began using it. Most, but not all. Sarah pulled out her notes. I cross-referenced Appendix G with the actual delivery documentation that was in the file. 3 of the required features were missing from the initial delivery. Specifically, the real-time data synchronization module, the advanced reporting dashboard, and the automated backup protocol. They were added later in an update that came 6 months after the initial delivery. Marcus leaned forward, suddenly paying much closer attention. Go on. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. Now look at section 22.1, the termination clause. It says that if either party fails to fulfill a material obligation under the contract, the other party has the right to terminate the agreement with 30 days written notice. Marcus felt his pulse quickening. Are you saying the incomplete delivery was a material breach that would have given us the right to terminate? Yes, but here is where it gets complicated. Look at section 22.3. If a party has the right to terminate but does not exercise that right within 90 days of discovering the breach, they waive their right to terminate based on that specific breach. So we cannot terminate now, obviously. That window closed long ago. Marcus felt his brief spark of hope fading. Then I do not see how this helps us. But here is the crucial part, Mr. Chen. Sarah leaned forward, her voice gaining confidence as she explained her reasoning. Section 22.3 says we waived our right to terminate, but it says nothing about waiving the right to use that breach as a defense against claims made by the breaching party. Those are two different things under contract law. Marcus grabbed the contract and read the section Sarah had pointed out. His legal mind, sharp despite his exhaustion, began to see what she was seeing. His hands started shaking slightly. You were saying that because Titan delivered incomplete software, they were in breach first? And even though we did not terminate the contract, we can use their breach as a defense against their lawsuit claiming we breached? Exactly. Their entire lawsuit is based on claiming that we breached the contract by not making certain milestone payments and not meeting certain delivery deadlines on our end. But under basic contract law principles, if they were already in material breach when they made those demands, then their breach excuses our subsequent performance. It is called the doctrine of material breach and the perfect tender rule. A party cannot demand strict performance from the other party when they themselves have failed to perform. But would missing 3 features really constitute a material breach? Marcus was playing devil's advocate now, testing her logic. They might argue those were minor deficiencies. Sarah had anticipated this. Look at the language in section 15.3.7 again. It does not say the software should be substantially complete or mostly operational. It says, quote, complete and operational, unquote. And then look at section 4.2, which defines material terms. It specifically states that all technical requirements in Appendix G are material terms of the agreement. They made completeness material by definition in the contract itself. Marcus stood up abruptly and began pacing his office, his mind racing. He had been so focused on finding a way out of the obligations that had led to the lawsuit, he had never thought to examine whether Titan had met all of their obligations first. The lawyers had been doing the same thing, looking for technicalities or loopholes that would excuse Chen Technologies' performance. No one had thought to look at whether Titan's performance had been perfect. Miss Mitchell, where did you learn about contract law, about concepts like material breach and perfect tender? I read a lot. Law books, old case files that get thrown away, online legal resources. I always wanted to be a lawyer, but I never got the chance to finish school. My father died when I was in community college, and I had to drop out to work and support my family. Marcus looked at this young woman, this secretary who made probably less in a year than he spent on his car, someone who had taught herself contract law from discarded books and free internet resources, and felt a wave of emotion he could not quite name. Shame that he had never noticed her before, that he had walked past her desk probably 1,000 times without really seeing her. Amazement that she had found in minutes what his expensive legal team had missed in months. And hope, real hope, for the first time in weeks. Miss Mitchell, do you mind if I call Jonathan Pierce right now? I need him to hear this directly from you. Of course not, sir. But are you sure? I mean, I could be completely wrong about this. Maybe there is some legal principle I do not know about that makes this defense invalid. There is only one way to find out. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed. Jonathan answered on the third ring, his voice groggy and irritated. Marcus? It is almost 9 o'clock at night. Is everything all right? Jonathan, I need you to come back to the office right now. Right now. Bring your copy of the Titan contract and call David and Patricia too. Get them back here. Marcus, I just got home. I am exhausted. My wife is furious that I have been working late every night for 3 months. Can this possibly wait until morning? No, it cannot. Trust me, Jonathan. You are going to want to see this. I think we might have found something. Found something? What are you talking about? We have been over every page of that contract a dozen times. Just get here. I will explain when you arrive. 45 minutes later, Jonathan Pierce sat in Marcus's office, his reading glasses perched on his nose, staring intently at the contract sections that Sarah had highlighted. David Rothstein and Patricia Mendez, 2 other senior lawyers on the case, had also been called in. They were all examining the documents with increasing excitement and disbelief. Jonathan looked up at Sarah, who was standing nervously by the door, feeling completely out of place among all these powerful attorneys in their expensive suits. She was acutely aware of her off-the-rack dress from a discount store, her shoes that needed to be replaced but she could not afford new ones yet, her simple appearance compared to their polished professionalism. Miss Mitchell, this is absolutely brilliant. How in the world did we miss this? I think maybe it is because you were all looking for a way out of the contract, Sarah said quietly. You were looking for escape clauses or loopholes in our obligations. But I was not looking for anything specific. I was just reading it, trying to understand it. And this jumped out at me because it seemed contradictory. They deliver incomplete software, but they are suing you for breach of contract? That did not make logical sense to me, so I dug deeper to understand why. David Rothstein shook his head in amazement. The doctrine of material breach. It is such a fundamental principle, one of the first things they teach you in first-year contracts class. But we were so focused on the trees that we missed the forest. Patricia Mendez was already on her laptop, pulling up case law. I am finding dozens of precedents where incomplete delivery was held to be material breach, even when the missing elements seemed minor. Patricia Mendez was already on her laptop, pulling up case law. I am finding dozens of precedents where incomplete delivery was held to be material breach, even when the missing elements seemed minor. And look at this case from the Second Circuit. The court held that when a contract explicitly defines certain requirements as material, the party cannot later argue they were immaterial. Jonathan stood up and walked over to Sarah. Miss Mitchell, I have been practicing law for 20 years. I have worked on some of the biggest corporate cases in this country, and I am telling you what you just did, the analysis you performed, it is as good as anything I have seen from the best lawyers at the best firms. This is why fresh eyes are so valuable. We were so deep into this case, so convinced we knew every angle, that we developed tunnel vision. You came in with no preconceptions and saw what we could not see. Over the next 2 weeks, the legal team worked around the clock to build their defense based on Sarah's discovery. They pulled delivery records, technical documentation, email correspondence, everything that proved Titan Industries had delivered incomplete software. They brought in technical experts to testify about the missing features and their importance. They researched case law supporting the material breach defense. Sarah found herself working closely with the legal team, helping them understand the connections she had made between different sections of the contract. She would come in early, stay late, spending hours in conference rooms with the lawyers. At first, she was intimidated, surrounded by people with law degrees from elite schools. But as the days went on, she realized that they respected her insights. They asked her opinion. They listened when she spoke. The lawyers were amazed by her analytical skills and her deep understanding of contract law, all self-taught. Patricia Mendez pulled her aside one day. "Sarah, have you ever thought about going to law school? You have a natural talent for this. You think like a lawyer." "I have thought about it," Sarah admitted, "but law school costs a fortune, and I barely make enough to support myself and help my family. It is just a dream at this point." "Well, after this case is over, we should talk about that. There might be options you have not considered." When the trial began, Titan Industries came in confident, expecting an easy victory. Their lead counsel, Martin Shaw, was known as a shark, someone who destroyed opponents without mercy. He had built his reputation on aggressive litigation tactics and had never lost a case this big. Their lawyers had prepared an aggressive case, documenting every way Chen Technologies had allegedly breached the contract. They had charts and graphs and expert witnesses all lined up to demonstrate the damages Titan had suffered. The first 2 days of trial went badly for Chen Technologies. Martin Shaw was brutal in his opening statement, painting Marcus Chen as an irresponsible CEO who had flagrantly violated a clear contract, costing Titan Industries hundreds of millions in lost revenue. He presented email evidence showing that Chen Technologies had missed deadlines. He showed payment schedules that had not been met. He built what seemed like an overwhelming case. Marcus sat at the defense table, watching his company being torn apart, and felt despair creeping in. Even with Sarah's discovery, he worried it might not be enough. Titan's lawyers were too good, too prepared. But on the third day of trial, when Jonathan Pierce stood up to present the defense, everything changed. He was calm, methodical, and absolutely devastating. He started by acknowledging that, yes, Chen Technologies had missed certain deadlines and payments. But then he explained why. "Your Honor, the reason my client struggled to meet its obligations was because the software that Titan Industries delivered was incomplete. They failed to provide 3 critical features that were explicitly required under the contract. And ladies and gentlemen, these were not minor features. These were core functionalities that my client needed to operate its business effectively." He methodically demonstrated that Titan Industries had delivered incomplete software, showing the original delivery documentation, the technical specifications that were missing, and the later update that finally provided those features. He brought in technical experts who testified about the importance of those missing features and how their absence had disrupted Chen Technologies' operations. Then Jonathan pulled out the contract and walked the judge through the sections that Sarah had found, explaining how the incomplete delivery constituted material breach, and how that breach excused Chen Technologies from its subsequent obligations. The Titan lawyers were caught completely off guard. They scrambled to respond, arguing that the missing features were minor, that they had been corrected quickly, that Chen Technologies had accepted the software without complaint at the time. Martin Shaw was visibly furious, realizing his case was falling apart. But the contract language was clear, and Jonathan was relentless. He cited case after case supporting the material breach defense. He showed that the contract itself had defined all Appendix G requirements as material terms. He demonstrated that under established legal principles, when one party fails to perform a material obligation, the other party is excused from subsequent performance. The judge, an experienced jurist named Helen Rodriguez, who had seen thousands of contracts in her 30-year career, read through the relevant sections carefully. She asked tough questions of both sides. She requested additional briefing on specific legal points. After 2 days of arguments, she took the matter under advisement. 3 days later, she delivered her ruling from the bench. The courtroom was packed with reporters, Chen Technologies employees, and interested observers. Marcus sat next to Jonathan, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. In the back of the courtroom, Sarah sat quietly, having been given permission to attend by her supervisor. This court has carefully reviewed the contract, the evidence, and the legal arguments presented by both parties, Judge Rodriguez began. The central question is whether Titan Industries' delivery of incomplete software constitutes a material breach that would excuse Chen Technologies from its subsequent obligations. She paused, and the silence in the courtroom was deafening. After thorough analysis, this court finds that Titan Industries did indeed fail to deliver software that met all specifications outlined in Appendix G of the contract. Specifically, 3 required features were missing from the initial delivery. The contract explicitly states that all Appendix G requirements are material terms of the agreement. Therefore, the incomplete delivery constitutes a material breach of contract. Marcus felt tears welling up in his eyes. Under the well-established doctrine of material breach, when one party fails to perform a material obligation, the other party is excused from performing its subsequent obligations. Titan Industries cannot demand strict performance from Chen Technologies when Titan itself failed to perform. The principle is fundamental to contract law and has been consistently upheld by courts for centuries. Martin Shaw was whispering frantically to his colleagues, realizing they were about to lose. Therefore, Chen Technologies cannot be held liable for breach of contract when it was responding to Titan Industries' prior material breach. The lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. Titan Industries is ordered to pay Chen Technologies' legal costs and fees. The gavel came down, and the courtroom erupted. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. 15,000 jobs had just been saved. His company would survive. Jonathan was shaking his hand, congratulating him, but Marcus was looking toward the back of the courtroom, where Sarah sat with tears streaming down her face. As they left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions at Marcus, asking how he felt about the victory. He gave a brief statement, thanking his legal team and expressing relief that his employees' jobs were secure. But his mind was elsewhere. That evening, Marcus called Jonathan to his office at Chen Technologies headquarters. "Jonathan, I want to do something for Sarah Mitchell. She saved this company. She saved 15,000 jobs. She found what you and 16 other brilliant lawyers could not find. What would be appropriate?" Jonathan smiled. "Marcus, she is the one who found the key to this entire case. She is the one who had the courage to bring it to your attention. I would say anything you want to do would be appropriate. That woman has a brilliant legal mind. She should be in law school." "That is exactly what I was thinking." Marcus looked thoughtful. "I want to change her life the way she changed the future of this company." The next morning, Marcus called Sarah into his office at Chen Technologies. She came in nervously, wondering if perhaps she had overstepped somehow, gotten too involved in matters above her position, made someone at the law firm angry. "Miss Mitchell, please sit down." Sarah sat, her heart racing, trying to read his expression. Marcus looked at her seriously. "Miss Mitchell, I want to start by saying thank you. What you did, finding that clause, understanding its implications, having the courage to come to me with it even though you had every reason to be intimidated, you saved this company. You saved 15,000 people's jobs, including my own. I can never fully repay that debt. Sir, I was just doing what anyone would have done. I saw something that seemed important, and I brought it to your attention." "No, that is not true. Sarah, 17 lawyers did not do it. These are brilliant people, well-educated, experienced, and they missed it completely. You saw what they could not see because you were not constrained by their assumptions and methodologies. You thought differently, and that different perspective was exactly what we needed." Marcus leaned forward. "I have a proposal for you, and I want you to think about it carefully before you answer. First, effective immediately, your salary is being increased to $120,000 per year. That is what a first-year associate at a good law firm would make. Sarah gasped, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Sir, that is too generous. I am just a secretary. I do not deserve." "You are not just anything, Miss Mitchell, and you certainly deserve this. But I am not finished. Second, if you are interested, I would like to sponsor your education. Chen Technologies will pay for you to complete your undergraduate degree and then attend law school. Full tuition, plus a living stipend so you do not have to work while studying. We will also provide support for your family, the money you have been sending home to help them. That will continue, paid by the company, so your education does not create hardship for them." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. She could not speak. Marcus continued, "You will work part-time in our legal department while you study, getting practical experience and staying connected to the company. When you graduate and pass the bar exam, you will have a position waiting for you as an attorney at Chen Technologies, starting at $180,000 per year. Or, if you prefer, I will write you a recommendation to any law firm in the country, and with your story and your abilities, they will fight each other to hire you." Sarah wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. "Mr. Chen, I do not know what to say. This is more than I ever dreamed possible. Are you certain? I mean, I come from nothing. I am nobody special. Why would you do all this for me?" Marcus smiled warmly. "Miss Mitchell, you are someone who taught herself contract law while working a full-time job and supporting your family. You are someone who had the courage to speak up when you could have stayed silent. You are someone who saw what others could not see. That makes you very special indeed." I believe in rewarding talent and courage, and you have demonstrated both in abundance. So, is that a yes? Sarah laughed through her tears. "Yes, yes, of course yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Chen. I promise I will work hard. I will not let you down." "You already proved yourself, Sarah. This is not charity. This is an investment in someone with enormous potential. I am betting on you because I believe you are going to do extraordinary things." Over the next few years, Sarah worked harder than she had ever worked in her life. She finished her undergraduate degree in 2 years, taking classes at night and on weekends while working in Chen Technologies' legal department during the day. The company's in-house lawyers became her mentors, teaching her everything they knew, and they were continually impressed by her natural aptitude for legal reasoning and her incredible work ethic. Her mother cried when Sarah told her about the scholarship and the family support. For the first time since her husband died, Elena Mitchell did not have to worry about money. Tommy stayed in school and even joined the robotics club. Maria started thinking seriously about college. The family was going to be okay. Sarah was accepted to Columbia Law School, one of the top law schools in the country. When she got the acceptance letter, she called Marcus immediately. "I got in! I actually got into Columbia Law School!" "I never doubted you would. Congratulations, Sarah. You earned this." During law school, Sarah clerked at Chen Technologies during summers and breaks, working on increasingly complex legal matters. The other law students were amazed when they learned her story. Many of them came from privileged backgrounds, had gone to elite undergraduate schools, had never really struggled. Sarah's journey inspired them and also humbled them. She graduated in the top 10% of her class, receiving several awards for academic excellence. When she took the bar exam, she passed on her first try with a score in the 95th percentile. Marcus Chen personally attended her admission ceremony to the New York State Bar. As she took her oath as a licensed attorney, he watched with pride, remembering the nervous young secretary who had knocked on his office door that rainy evening 5 years earlier.
True to his promise, Marcus offered Sarah a position as a corporate attorney at Chen Technologies. She accepted without hesitation. This company had given her a chance when no one else would have.
This was where she wanted to build her career. Sarah joined Chen Technologies' legal department, but she did not forget where she came from. She made it her mission to notice the people that others overlooked. The support staff, the assistants, the people who kept the company running behind the scenes. She learned their names, asked about their lives, encouraged their dreams. She created a mentorship program at Chen Technologies to identify talented employees who might not have had opportunities for advancement and helped them develop their skills. The program became a model that other companies studied and tried to replicate. She also worked with Marcus to establish the Mitchell Scholarship Fund, named after her father, providing full scholarships for children from low-income families who wanted to pursue legal education or other professional degrees. The first scholarship recipient was Sarah's own younger brother Tommy, who had been inspired by his sister's journey and wanted to become an engineer. 5 years after she had found that crucial clause in the Titan Industries contract, at age 38, Sarah was named the youngest vice president in Chen Technologies history, overseeing the entire legal department. She had a team of 40 lawyers working under her, many of them graduates of prestigious law schools, all of them respecting her not just for her position, but for her brilliant legal mind and her compassionate leadership style. One evening, Sarah was working late in her office when she received an unexpected visitor. It was Jennifer, her former colleague from the secretarial pool, the one who had told her years ago that the lawyers would never care how much she knew. "Sarah?" Jennifer stood in the doorway, looking nervous. "I heard you were the new vice president of legal. I wanted to congratulate you. And to apologize." "Apologize? For what?" Sarah stood and gestured for Jennifer to sit. "For telling you that you were wasting your time reading all those law books. For saying they would never make you a lawyer. I was wrong. And seeing what you have accomplished, it makes me wonder what I could have done if I had believed in myself the way you believed in yourself." "Jennifer, you do not need to apologize. And it is never too late. What do you want to do? What are your dreams?" They talked for over an hour, and by the end of the conversation, Jennifer had enrolled in a business management program at a local college with tuition support from the Mitchell Scholarship Fund. She eventually became an operations manager at Chen Technologies. One day, Sarah received an invitation to speak at Columbia Law School's Career Day. As she stood before a room full of first-year law students, many of them worried about their futures, wondering if they had what it took to succeed, she told them her story. The whole story, not leaving out the struggles or the doubts or the fear. "I dropped out of college when my father died. I worked as a secretary making $35,000 a year. I taught myself law by reading books during my lunch breaks and staying up late at night studying. I was nobody important, nobody special, just someone trying to get by and help my family survive. But I learned something crucial along the way. Success in law, success in any field really, is not just about having the right degree from the right school, or coming from the right family, or knowing the right people." She paused, looking around the room at the earnest young faces. "Success is about seeing what others miss. It is about having the courage to speak up when you have an idea, even if you are terrified of being wrong. It is about caring enough about the outcome to give your very best effort, no matter how insignificant your role might seem. And it is about never letting anyone convince you that you do not belong somewhere because of your background or your circumstances." A young woman in the front row raised her hand. "But, Miss Mitchell, how did you have the courage to approach the CEO? I mean, you were just a secretary. Were not you afraid?" "I was terrified.
My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the contract. I almost turned around and went back to my desk at least 3 times. But I realized something important. I was afraid of looking foolish, afraid of being wrong. But those fears were about protecting my own ego. On the other side of the equation were 15,000 people who were going to lose their jobs if I stayed silent. When I thought about it that way, my fear seemed selfish and small. The potential to help was more important than the risk of embarrassment. The students gave her a standing ovation. Afterward, several came up to talk to her, including a young woman who reminded Sarah of herself at that age, full of dreams but uncertain about the path forward. Ms. Mitchell, I am a first-generation college student. My parents are immigrants. They clean offices for a living. Sometimes I feel like I do not belong here, like everyone else is smarter and better prepared than me, like I am an imposter. Sarah smiled and put a hand on the young woman's shoulder. I know exactly how you feel. I felt that way every single day when I started at Columbia. I felt that way in my first years practicing law, surrounded by people from Harvard and Yale and Stanford. But let me tell you something that took me a long time to learn. Your background is not a weakness. It is a strength. You see the world differently than people who have always had privilege and opportunity. That different perspective is valuable. You understand things about struggle and resilience and determination that people who have never had to fight for anything will never understand. Do not try to hide it or overcome it. Use it. Let it inform your work. It might be the thing that makes you brilliant. The young woman's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I needed to hear that. As Sarah drove home that evening through the streets of Manhattan, she thought about how radically her life had changed. She lived in a beautiful apartment now, in a safe neighborhood. She did not have to worry about paying rent or whether she could afford groceries. Her mother had retired from nursing, her arthritis no longer forcing her to work through pain. Tommy had graduated from MIT with an engineering degree and was working at a tech startup. Maria was in her second year at Cornell, studying pre-law, wanting to follow in her sister's footsteps. But more than the material success, more than the money or the title or the respect, what meant the most to Sarah was the impact she was having on other people's lives. The scholarship recipients who wrote to her, telling her how the program had changed everything for them. The employees she had mentored who had gone on to achieve their own dreams. The students she spoke to who found hope in her story. Marcus Chen had seen her potential when she was just a secretary. He had believed in her when she barely believed in herself. He had given her an opportunity that changed her life. And she had proven that his faith was justified. But more than that, the experience had taught both of them something profound. In business, in law, in life, the solution to seemingly impossible problems often comes from unexpected places. The key is creating an environment where everyone feels empowered to contribute, where ideas are valued regardless of who presents them, where fresh perspectives are welcomed rather than dismissed. Chen Technologies had become known not just for its innovative technology, but for its unique culture. A culture where secretaries could become vice presidents, where ideas mattered more than credentials, where people were judged by their contributions rather than their backgrounds or degrees or connections. Other companies studied their model, trying to understand how they had created such an innovative and successful organization. The answer was simple, though not easy to implement. They had learned to see the potential in everyone. They had learned to listen to all voices, not just the loudest or most credentialed. They had learned that sometimes the person who saves your company is not the expensive consultant or the prestigious lawyer or the famous expert. Sometimes it is the person no one notices, the person who works quietly in the background, the person who cares deeply and pays attention, and has the courage to speak up when it matters most. Years later, when Sarah was featured in a Forbes article about the most influential corporate lawyers in America, the journalist asked her what advice she would give to her younger self, that nervous 28-year-old secretary who almost talked herself out of knocking on Marcus Chen's door. Sarah thought for a long moment. I would tell her several things. First, that courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite the fear. I was terrified that night, terrified of being wrong, of looking stupid, of overstepping my place. But I knocked on that door anyway because I cared more about helping than I cared about protecting myself from embarrassment. She continued. Second, I would tell her that your current circumstances do not define your potential. Just because you are a secretary does not mean that is all you can ever be. Just because you did not finish college does not mean you are not smart enough or capable enough. Where you start is not where you have to end. What else? Third, I would tell her that the people who succeed are often not the most naturally talented or the most privileged. They are the people who work the hardest, who care the most, who refuse to give up even when things seem impossible. And finally, I would tell her that one moment of courage can change everything, not just your own life, but the lives of thousands of other people. That is worth remembering when you are facing a scary decision. The journalist smiled. One last question. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not knocked on that door that night? Sarah's expression grew serious. Every single day. I think about how my life would be completely different. I would probably still be a secretary, struggling to pay rent, still supporting my family on $35,000 a year, still dreaming about becoming a lawyer, but believing it was impossible. More than that, Chen Technologies would probably have gone bankrupt. 15,000 people would have lost their jobs. Families would have been destroyed. Lives would have been devastated. She paused. But then I remind myself that we always have that choice. Every day, multiple times a day, we face moments where we can speak up or stay silent, where we can take a risk or play it safe, where we can use our talents or hide them out of fear. The trajectory of our entire lives is determined by those small choices, those moments of decision. I am grateful that on that particular night, I made the right choice. And I try to make that same choice every day now, to speak up, to contribute, to use whatever gifts I have been given to make a positive difference. That is what I owe to Marcus Chen for believing in me. That is what I owe to everyone who has supported me along the way. And that is what I owe to myself, to honor the courage it took to knock on that door. The story of Sarah Mitchell and the Titan Industries case became legendary in legal circles, business schools, and corporate boardrooms. It was taught in contract law classes as an example of brilliant analysis. It was discussed in management courses as a case study in recognizing hidden talent. And it was told in leadership seminars as a reminder that great ideas can come from anywhere if you create the right culture and pay attention. For Sarah, the greatest satisfaction came not from the professional recognition or the financial security, though those were certainly welcome. It came from the young people who reached out to her, people who felt overlooked or underestimated, people who did not think they belonged in prestigious careers. That is what I owe to everyone who has supported me along the way, and that is what I owe to myself, to honor the courage it took to knock on that door. The story of Sarah Mitchell and the Titan Industries case became legendary in legal circles, business schools, and corporate boardrooms. It was taught in contract law classes as an example of brilliant analysis. It was discussed in management courses as a case study in recognizing hidden talent. And it was told in leadership seminars as a reminder that great ideas can come from anywhere if you create the right culture and pay attention. For Sarah, the greatest satisfaction came not from the professional recognition or the financial security, though those were certainly welcome. It came from the young people who reached out to her,
people who felt overlooked or underestimated, people who did not think they belonged in prestigious careers.
She made time for all of them, answering their emails, taking their calls, meeting them for coffee when she could. She told them her story and encouraged them to find their own courage. And sometimes, when she was working late in her corner office on the 45th floor, she would look at the framed copy of page 247 of the Titan Industries contract hanging on her wall, the page that had changed everything. That single page represented more than a legal victory. It represented the moment when she had believed in herself enough to take a chance. The moment when someone had believed in her enough to give her an opportunity. The moment when everything became possible. Sarah Mitchell had started as nobody special, just a secretary trying to make ends meet. But she had become living proof that with courage, hard work, and the willingness to see things differently, anyone can achieve extraordinary things. And that was a message worth sharing, a story worth telling, a lesson the world needed to hear.